Welcome back, my awesome people. Now, today I am so honored to be here with Ben Hwang, who is the CEO of Profusa. Now, Profusa is a leading development of a new generation of biointegrated sensors with the ability to monitor body chemistry and disease. And Profusa's first clinical offering is the Lumee Oxygen Platform. Now, this is new to me, and I'm sure it's new to some of you as well, but I am looking forward to hearing what Ben has to say, all the expertise and wisdom that he's going to provide for us. And of course, he does have a ticker symbol as well. Profusa's ticker symbol is PFSA. So if you love what you hear from this interview and you want to invest, you definitely can, as they are on the NASDAQ. So let's get right into it. Ben, how are you doing today? Thank you for being here with me.
Jacob, it's an honor to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I've been excited about this now for a couple of days. So I've been looking up on your channel. You do great stuff. I'm excited for you.
I appreciate it. I always try to bring on people who can give some wisdom, expertise, something to give back to the audience because I know they're always wanting more knowledge and more information. Ben, let's just get right into it. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? How did you get involved with Profusa and an overview of its mission and its purpose?
Sure. Well, a little bit about myself. My background is actually quite eclectic, and it has something to do with I think how this company also came about too. So bear with me for a second. My family immigrated to this country when I was young and grew up in Southern California. And through that journey, I was very, very fortunate when I was younger to have been a bat boy for the LA Dodgers and then worked with the Dodgers organization until I was about 23 years old. And during that time, learned a bunch, had a great time. But when I decided to go back to school, um, at the age of 23, I realized that potentially my passion and what I wanted to do was in the sciences. I've always been science my interest in science has always been pretty high. And I went to a community college, and during that summer, I was looking for a job, and I went knocking on doors at Caltech, trying to find a job in a laboratory. And through a set of fortunate circumstances, I ended up in the lab of a guy named Lee Hood, who was a very famous biotechnologist. And he invented, or his lab invented, the DNA sequencing machine. And that DNA sequencing machine really changed our lives. Before that machine was, and that technology was developed, sequencing a DNA of the human genome was an impossibility. After the machine was developed, sequencing human genome became something that today it could be had for a few $100s. And there's nothing in life sciences or in our daily lives where we can't talk about without understanding DNA. There's nothing in terms of drugs and medicine that's developed without understanding DNA. So very early on, I realized how important a technology could be to really change the world. DNA sequencing is one of them, and we think Profusa is the next one. And what Profusa does actually is, I don't know what kind of watch you wear, Jacob. You might have an Apple Watch on you. You might have a Fitbit on you. You might have a Whoop
I
band on you.
I do have a
There
Fitbit.
you go. So Fitbit is great, right? It counts your steps. It helps you keep healthy. It creates real-time data about your health for you. But as wonderful as Fitbit and Apple Watch, these technologies are, one thing that's actually lacking is the data that you get. While it might be helpful to you, it's not very helpful to the clinician or the doctors who are actually trying to take care of you. What the doctors care about and what the doctors want to know is how is your biochemistry doing? Because there are decades of clinical studies and literature about what sodium level means, what calcium level means, what glucose level means, what tissue perfusion and oxygen level means. And when you have that information that's easy to get as wearing a Fitbit, but instead of counting steps, you're actually getting real-time monitoring and real-time information about your biochemistry. And you could do so at a cost basis that is so low that you really don't need full-blown insurance to have access to it. We think that that technology then really opens up ability to not just manage chronic diseases, but also change healthcare delivery in a very profound way.
And you
And
know
it's,
that
yeah.
sorry.
No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say that that is such a revolutionary product and even idea because as we move towards AI technology, people want to have the preventative healthcare. I actually just interviewed someone really recently who had the Chubb device, which is more of a they can monitor your breathing, can monitor your heart rate, kind of similar to the other wearables. But for them, it was more of from a Department of Defense sector. However, yours is more from the average consumer. Am I correct?
Yeah, so our device actually kind of scales across both consumer and the physician, and as far into the valuable real estate in the hospital of the OR of the operating room. You know, the whole notion of healthcare is, first do no harm, but it also means that these problems that the healthcare industry really needs to solve for all of us to live better lives needs to be much more proactive than reactive, right? So think about it this way. Listen, we're healthy individuals, but all of us are on the way of developing some disease. Nobody wakes up one day and say, "Oh, I've developed diabetes," or wake up one day and say, "Oh, I developed cardiovascular disease." The progression toward that disease diagnosis has probably been happening for years, if not decades. It's just that one day you go to the hospital and the doctor does a test, and then that test triggers this diagnosis, right? To say, okay, well, your cholesterol is high enough now, or your plaque building up in a, blood level is high enough now where we're diagnosing you with the disease. But had you known that you're going down that path early on, you probably could have done something to prevent that disease from happening, prevent that diagnosis from occurring, and probably more importantly, delay that diagnosis because you could actually do something about it while the disease is actually progressing. And having real-time monitoring of biochemistry, and I want your audience here to appreciate this, I hope. Uh, I'm old enough to remember security systems back when I was growing up was a camera, and it would take a picture and then 30 minutes later take another picture, and then 30 minutes later take another picture. And what'll happen is if something occurs, you'll see one picture, everything's fine, door's shut, everything's closed. And then 30 minutes later, you look at the picture and the door's blown open, everything is gone. So you know that a crime or something bad happened between those two pictures in that 30-minute time frame. But in real time, you don't know exactly what's happening. Healthcare today and blood tests is the same thing. You take a blood test 1 year during your physical, doctor says you're okay. You take it another year, doctor says you're okay. And then the third year, it's like, hey, something's going on. Let's figure things out. But if you have the ability to, instead of taking pictures, but actually take a movie, if you have the ability to in real time understanding how your biochemistry is going up and down, how it's reacting to the choices you're making, the foods that you're eating, but not just counting steps, but parameters that physicians really, really care about, then we actually think we have something.
I personally think you guys definitely have something. This is incredible. I think the lingo these days is called biohacking, where you're
Mhm.
able to understand what you need, what your body needs, and go from there. I think this is incredible because personally, I would definitely get the device because sometimes people are afraid to go to the doctor. They're like, "Well, I haven't been in 2, 3 years. I'm scared of what they might find." But if they had devices like this or technology like this, they're able to monitor it themselves before they have to even get to the doctor. I think this is incredible technology. And so, what inspired you and Profusa to focus on developing biosensors like the Lumee Oxygen Platform? And what does Lumee actually do?
Yeah, so about 14 years ago, the co-founders of the company just realized that at that time there was this big push of if you create enough data, then uh, the improvement, if you will, in data analytics would be able to take all this information and make something out of it. And so it was, if you build it, they will come. That's where the advent of Fitbit came about. That's where the advent of a lot of devices that are just trying to measure things that are easy to measure, right? Steps, pulse, blood oxygen level, etc. And I think the inspiration back then is the vision of having something that you could wear on you that measures a healthy health parameter that gives people real-time information on how to live their lives better. I think that vision was really admirable, and a lot of people really believed in it. But we thought something else was missing. And the something else was missing is, instead of counting steps, we ought to be providing for physicians information that they're trained to read, and that they know what to do with if they know the number is X versus Y. So for example, with counting steps, as wonderful as that product is, has really inspired a lot of people to live healthier lives. If you feel a little sick and you go to your physician and say, hey, I'm feeling a little down, but uh, I've been keeping track of my steps every day. And I know I've been taking 12,000 steps, 15,000 steps, or 8,000 steps, and here's 1 month worth of my Fitbit data. The physician probably will say, great, I'm so glad that you're taking your health in your own hands and you're so concerned about it and you're monitoring it. But I still have to draw a vial of blood because I don't know what to do with that number, 12,000 steps a day. So we at Profusa decided that to create a really revolutionary company and to actually take advantage of all the advancements that are around us today, computational power, microelectronics, microfluidics, MEMS devices. You could pull all of that together and develop a wearable device and a platform that is inexpensive to access, that's really easy to use. But instead of counting steps and breathing and heart rate, etc., we're looking at real-time biochemistry, then we really could change the world. And we started, the founders of the company, the co-founders of the company started just thinking through a little bit of ideas on how to scientifically or technically solve the problem that's inherent in developing a platform like that. We received probably around $30 million through the lifetime of the company of support from DARPA, which they're really interested in technologies like this for soldiers' health, both in training as well as soldier health management on the battlefield. And ultimately, we solved the biggest problem or the biggest technical hurdle in developing a product like this, and Lumi was born. And what Lumi does is a platform technology that has a little sliver, and I don't know if you could see it in here. I have this vial. Can you see the little sliver floating around inside?
Yep, we can see it.
Yeah. So that little sliver really, quote unquote, is our sensor. It's made of a material that's very similar to what soft contact lenses are. And it's about 400 microns in diameter, about 3 to 4 millimeters long. It's injected under the skin. There are no electronics, no coils. It's just a soft contact lens material with a sensing chemistry on it. And then you wear a reader on the surface of the skin, and that reader takes the sensor signal and send it to the phone, send it to the cloud, and give the data actually to whoever you actually want to get to. And by changing the chemistry itself, we could change what we actually want to measure. So our first product is measuring tissue oxygen, how much oxygen your tissue actually sees, not how much oxygen is in the blood vessel. And that's an incredibly important clinical measurement for critical limb ischemia, for ulcerations that won't heal, potential applications in flap reconstructions, etc. And that device and that application has already was CE approved a couple of years ago. We have physicians and users that are lined up. It meets a very clinical need in the clinical setting for physicians. We got distributors that are actually lining up in Europe, and we're starting to ship the product in the first quarter of next year. And the next step is glucose management for diabetes. At a fraction of a cost of current continuous glucose monitors today, you could actually keep track of diabetes and manage your life better. If you have glucose and oxygen and then add lactate into it, you have a perfect metabolic sensor. And then we also have had developmental data on sodium, potassium. So on this very first platform, if you will, a little tiny hydrogel injected in the skin, months of functionality, delightful use case, and the cost very, very low. We can actually bring a very high value, validated, if you will, medical device into somebody's homes. And there's so many ways that you could actually go at it being able to generate that data, helping people manage the disease better, I think impacts telemedicine, impacts the way you and I actually live our daily lives, impacts chronic disease sufferers on how they actually manage the disease better, on and on and on. We're pretty excited about what this platform could actually do.
I think this is definitely an exciting product. Like as you were talking, I'm just thinking of all the thousands of uses that this device can definitely utilize. Like, for example, athletes, right? I'm sure athletes would
Yeah.
love to have this and monitor, especially if they're preparing for the Olympics of some sort, or even pregnant mothers. Maybe they have to monitor something, there's something going on, right? So I think this is incredible. And so I know traditional hospitals and doctors are kind of stubborn when it comes to change and new technology, but have there been doctors and hospitals kind of waiting in line for this? How far is the development? Like, is this a fully functional product yet, or is this soon coming out of the pipeline?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Jacob, because you teed it up well for us. We have, as I mentioned, the first product we received CE approval about 3 or 4 years ago. And during that CE approval, in order to get CE approval, European approval, obviously you have to do clinical studies. So the clinical studies are actually run by key opinion leaders, very well-respected surgeons that use the Lumee Oxygen for the initial indication, which is critical limb ischemia. And these are the patients who actually have foot ulcers that won't heal. Most of them suffer from diabetes. And those physicians, when we ask them after the clinical studies are done and we continue to engage them, the feedback from them is incredibly positive. We announced, excuse me, a few of those physicians already committing to be users of the technology as integrated into their practice. The distributors that we actually have in Europe are excited to actually have this product. Our ability to actually get product into the hands of the physicians and to help as many people as we possibly can today is not something that's planned in the future. It actually, as I mentioned, will happen probably in Q1 of next year. The clinical studies have completed. The physicians are actually excited to adopt it in technology, and we'll be shipping product in Q1 of next year. So it's an exciting time for us. It's why we went public. We think being a public company has a lot of advantages, both in terms of resources, but also a soapbox for us to get on and really get our story out. I think the world needs to understand what we do, and the world needs to understand our story. And I think more importantly, Jacob, our ability to actually help people and help these patients is real, is tangible, is near term. The reason that we could help those folks is, one, we're measuring things that currently there's no good way of measuring today. I think that's really important. Two, the usability is so delightful that I think the deployment of this device, if you will, makes it easy for either sick patients or chronic patients or even healthy individuals to actually adopt. And third, the price is low enough where our cost basis is low enough where it's not thousands of dollars a medical device you actually have to get insurance to pay for. But in US and Europe, it's a great economic equation because the cost basis is fundamentally low. In places in Asia, two-thirds of the population in the world actually live in places where the GDP doesn't support very expensive medical equipment. And we could bring the best-in-class technology into Africa, Asia, other places where normally these kind of technologies would not be accessible to them. And from a business perspective, selfishly, it means the total addressable market and is much, much larger. But I think what's more important to us from a mission perspective is we could actually help so many more people. And I think the business outcome will come because the accessibility and the affordability is actually there. But we live in such an exciting time, Jacob. All of this talk about AI, all of this talk about the convergence of how AI could help healthcare. I think that's one aspect that we haven't talked enough about, but I'm personally very excited about. Imagine what it's like for an AI learning engine to actually have real-time biochemistry for an individual, you, Jacob, me, Ben, and others, and link that information to the decades of clinical studies that have gone on what this level of sodium means, this level of glucose means. Link that up to my personal electronic medical records to understand that when I've been under these type of treatment modalities, here's how my disease come out better. and then add this stream of information that doesn't exist right now, but will exist with Profusa, which is real-time biochemistry information. The power of that combination of data, I think it's incredible in the current paradigm of what AI could be to healthcare. Because if you understand, and I know you do, you understand what AI is. AI really is just a really intelligent learning engine and learning model. And so if you have X amount of information, that black box that they're learning from, give you really, really good insight out. But if that black box, you add that to, you add our data to it, you add a new bespoke uh, a data set that's never existed before, the AI engine could just do so much more in terms of give you actually real-time information and real-time diagnostics capability and advice. And we think our data set is going to be probably one of the more important data sets for AI as it applies to healthcare. And we're excited for that vision to come true.
Oh, 100%. I mean, at this point, I think every company's form of currency is data and information, because not only do you get to know your customer, your clients, your patients a lot better, but also, as you said, right, AI is a powerhouse where the learning that it does will be so quick, and it gets rid of all the tedious work as well. Because I'm sure, 20 years ago, many of us were going through hundreds of documents just to find one sentence that we can use. But now with AI, it will go through thousands of pages and get us there. So this is an emerging market. I'm sure in the next 10 years, it will be far from where we are today. What are some of the challenges that you had to face when you were, I guess, scaling and developing Lumi?
Yeah. You know, uh, when I was in grad school, one of the dumb jokes out there was, scientific discovery is difficult, and it you have to do it over and over again. Because if you get it right the first time, they wouldn't call it research; they would just call it search. Right? It's just a stupid little joke, but it's true. When you are trying to develop technology, especially a technology that where you're trying to either overcome or take advantage of millions of years of evolution that created this really interesting organism that's us, right? They're human beings. Um, that technical advancement was actually quite difficult. And so to put a little sliver of hydrogel under the skin, while it sounds simple, for it to still function, it's actually a really difficult problem to overcome. And that's because you and I have this exquisite ability to determine what belongs inside your body and what doesn't. If we've ever had a splinter in our fingertips, you know exactly what I mean. That splinter could be as small as width of a hair and even smaller. And you may not even know when the splinter got into your skin. But once that splinter is in the skin, your body has this cascading immunological response and foreign body response that tries to get rid of it. And if it doesn't get rid of it, it starts encapsulating that splinter with collagen and scar tissue so that the splinter can't hurt the body. That foreign body response is actually a very difficult response to overcome. We celebrate it as human species because without it, we wouldn't be here. But for technologists, it's quite frustrating, right? The sensors that exists out there, when you have a needle through the skin, that's one of the ways that it's done. Within days, that needle gets encapsulated with scar tissue. And so now that sensor is no longer measuring what's in the body, it's measuring what's in the scar tissue. And our sensor platform took years to actually figure out a way to overcome that biological barrier. So technological advancement and to be able to build a platform that's low cost, that gives you clinically validated data, and that lasts in the body for months so that it's actually really easy to use, and it drives the cost being so low. That was a long, long journey, I think, one. Secondly, the regulatory journey was also difficult. But I don't want to complain about the regulatory journey, quite frankly, Jacob. I have 3 young children, and I so appreciate the fact that when I take my kid to the hospital and go see a doctor, and the doctor says, "Hey, take this drug," or "Hey, I'm going to do this test on you," I don't have to think about whether the drug's going to work or the test is going to work because the regulatory hurdle, especially in healthcare, you know that if the doctor's using it, it's actually gone through a lot of regulatory scrutiny. And that took a little while for us, but we do it happily because I think to be a responsible individual, especially when you're trying to create high value data to physicians and to end users and patients, you have to go through that regulatory journey so that people could trust it and so that we could trust it. And we've gone through that regulatory journey, at least in Europe, and we're doing so in the US, and excited to actually get that done. But technical development and regulatory process has been probably how we spent the bulk of the last 10 to 12 years.
Yeah, can you tell us more about the European market? I believe it's a massive market, and you guys have
Yeah.
entered it. What is going on out there?
Yeah, the European market, in medical device industry, and I think in a lot of places, both you kind of view the EU, the European market, and the US quite similarly. It's about a similar number of population in totality. And from a GDP and market sizing perspective, it's not uncommon for healthcare companies to actually interchangeably go to the European market first or go to the US market first. It's done pretty interchangeably. The difference between European market, though, is while we call it the European market, it's really an aggregation of many, many smaller countries. And some countries are large, some countries are small. They all have their own customs. Many of them have their own language. And their regulations, reimbursement, how physicians actually buy and use products are also quite different. So where we're fortunate enough is we looked at the European market and say there are a couple of things that are actually to our advantage. One, the European population, unfortunately, still develop disease and manage their health kind of the same way that the US actually does. Because our cost basis for our product, one of our mission is to be able to develop a product that's of medical grade, easy to use, but as many people as possible could actually benefit from it, and that's driven by cost. Because our cost is so low, instead of building our own sales team in Europe, we could actually take advantage of distributors and other sales channel partners that already exist and be able to share some of our margin with them and still retain a healthy margin and help our company continue to grow. And so that's also another really important feature of Europe. So over the last couple of months, we've done a good job in actually building that distribution network. I mentioned earlier in terms of our customer base and physicians committing to our platform because they've used it and they recognize the important clinical need. We think the European market is a great first step for us to actually take. And then, of course, Europe and the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think Europe is a great market because the United States, I know we're both considered Western nations, but we're also very different type of nations. Like for example, United States, there's kind of like four directions: north, east, south, and west, and then maybe the Midwest if you want to count it. But in Europe, you literally have like over 30, 40 very distinct cultures, languages, and pretty much countries. So I think it's a much better way to start off from there because you have a much more, I guess, diversity when it comes to people. But then also when we're looking at the ethical considerations, so this is very minimally invasive. You know, you do a little, the data is out there. Collecting the data. How does the platform deal with privacy issues, data
Yeah.
issues, because I know that's the big thing these days. And also, everybody's wondering about AI's future of how intrusive it is. How does Lumi deal with that?
It is top of mind for us for sure. And we deal with data privacy really with a couple of fundamental tenets. One fundamental tenet is the data belongs to the user. It doesn't belong to us. It doesn't belong to the physicians. It doesn't belong to the healthcare system. It doesn't belong to the government. It belongs to the user. You own your biochemistry information. Now, unfortunately, many people who actually wear sensors today, especially for medical usage or clinical usage, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for them to actually kind of shut it down, right? So they wear a device. If the only way they can actually with certainty to shut it down and say, take the device out, throw it away, and then put a new one in. But when you do that, you're throwing $30, $40 away into the trash can. And I think the inability for people to actually gain control over their biochemistry data, we think it's a miss in the entire healthcare system. I'll give you a good example. Forget about sensors. My guess is if I go to Quest Diagnostics or LabCorp and get a vial of blood drawn because my physician says, hey, I need to take a vial of blood just to see if you have X, right? What your marker actually looks like. I'm probably going to be the 8th person on the face of the planet to know about my own information. The phlebotomist draws it. It's going to go to the lab. The lab technician is going to see that result first. The lab technician is going to go to the supervisor, see that result next. It's going to go to the clinician, the hospital. The technicians, they're going to see it next. The nurse is going to see it next. The doctor is going to see it next. I won't know what my blood chemistry is telling me until 5, 6, 7, 8 other people would know the results before actually I do. The way our technology actually works is that little sliver of hydrogel, like literally it is soft contact lens with a little dye. It's no different than having a soft contact lens in your eye right now. There's no electronics. There's nothing that's pinging data out. Unless you're wearing the reader on your skin, there is no data to be actually had. And we thought it was really important to put that power into the hand of the user. That if you don't want anybody to actually know what's going on in your body because you're a diabetic patient, maybe you want to cheat a little bit and eat a donut because you haven't had one in a while and you don't want your doctor to give you grief or your parents to give you grief, take the reader off your skin and eat that donut and then put the reader back in a while. Because I think those choices ought to belong to the users. And for our platform, it's very easy to actually for you to monitor and say, when do I want my data to be gathered and when do I not? And it doesn't cost anything other than a small sliver of adhesive and just take the reader off. Nobody knows what's going on. You want to read it again, put the reader back on, and now you're back online. I think that's one. Two, there's also a specific reason for us to go to Europe first, because European regulation, especially with their HIPAA analogous rules, if you will, relative to data privacy, it's a little more stringent in Europe. And so we have to build our back end to actually allow individuals to say, hey, I want my data out of your system. We got to be able to do that and be able to demonstrate that we could do that. And so I think that's also a good test ground for us to build our muscles, if you will, and do some muscle building around data privacy. But it is really important to us. I think fundamentally, the way the platform is engineered gives the user really all of the power in the world to make sure that their data is only gathered and shared at the time that they want it to be gathered and shared.
That really does put the power back into their hands
Yeah.
because if you have a fitness trainer and that person is telling you, hey, this is your calorie intake for the day, and you really wanted that donut, you do want to take that monitor off. But I think having that control of your privacy is definitely crucial, especially now with everything becoming public. And so roughly how much would you say this device is going to eventually cost? Like we're looking at equitable globally. So for
Yeah.
example, will the price in Europe and United States be a lot different than say a price in Africa or Asia? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think it's fair to actually say pricing is always going to be, and listen, I'm going to put my businessman hat on, right? And the businessman hat on, or business leader hat on is, pricing obviously is always going to be multivariable, multidimensional, market by market dynamics, right? Because if you make your product somewhere and you could sell it without the burden of having to ship it around, that's very different than if you have to ship it somewhere and build it somewhere and then the import taxes, et cetera, et cetera. I think there are a couple of pieces of good news. One piece of good news is our ability to make the product available to markets globally is there because our overall fundamental cost is so low. So I think that's one. So whether you adjust the pricing up and down here and there, I think that's to be seen. But what we can pretty comfortably say, though, when we publicly announce this, is that when we do our modeling and we kind of do our expectations of what the revenue, et cetera, may look like, we think on average an 800 euro per patient for our initial device, Lumee Oxygen, is probably within ballpark. It could go up and down a little bit depending on where you are. But roughly on average, if you're thinking about 800 euros per patient, it's probably a good kind of ballpark to think about what economic value could be had. But more importantly, the data that we actually generate and the burden that this data, the economic burden that we put on top of generating this data for physicians to use, I think is incredibly reasonable, especially when you think about the amputation prevention and other bad things that could happen without this data set. So that's kind of how we think about it. It's about 800 euro. Think about now in the US for diabetes management, finger sticks is about $600 a year. Continuous glucose monitors, anywhere from 1,800 to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a year, depending on which device you actually use. And we think even in our case, we'll be very much close to where the type 2 finger stick solution is in terms of cost and pricing vis-a-vis our continuous monitor of the diabetes solution if and when that actually gets on the market. So I think our cost basis for the platform is very amenable to the pricing of competitive devices and alternatives that are out there today. We know that our first product, the Lumee Tissue Oxygen, roughly is about 800 euros, give or take. That's how we're modeling it, right? It's going to be different depending on which country you actually go into. And we'll probably be around the same place on the glucose side as well.
Nice. Yeah. Because, I mean, healthcare these days is just through the roof. Political policies, regulations, some policymakers want to reduce drug prices and pharma prices. Others want to increase it. So
Yeah.
it's all over the place. And I mean, once the product comes out, who knows? Maybe the technology might be a lot cheaper and it might even be lower than what was just mentioned. And so I know that Profusa is also on the NASDAQ and it's publicly traded under the ticker symbol PFSA. How do you balance the pressure of course shareholders and quarterly targets compared to advancing biosensor technology?
Yeah, that's listen, I'm a first-time public company CEO, so I'd like to say, or I like to think that I'm learning quickly, but I'm still with a great board around me, with a great team around me. I think we're going to do fine. I will say this, right? Our number one focus really is on the fundamentals of the company. Being a new public company, having gone through the de-SPAC process, I think there are probably investors or at least folks out there who are looking at our story and just trying to figure out what is it that Profusa do? What do you do? And are you a real company, or are you just a shell to try to get on, get public and get traded, and trying to create value through financial structuring as opposed to really a company that's going to create value with a product and create value for the end users. And our focus really is how do we actually every day when we wake up to help create the product and help as many people downstream as we possibly can and take our rightful place in the healthcare space. We have friends whose children suffer from diabetes. I have friends who actually have critical limb ischemia. We all know folks who actually have had diabetic ulcers in which their feet have to be amputated, et cetera. And anything that we could do to help our little infrastructure and our little circle of friends and family live their lives better, and by extension, helping others, friends and family, live their lives better. I think that's what we focus on. We'll end up creating a very valuable company because of it. So, we think about the public side of the company because, listen, without being public, I wouldn't have this honor and opportunity to speak with you, for example. So I love the fact that we could get our story out and help people understand what we're about and what we do. In terms of the public company side, clearly communicating to investors is important. That's what we're doing here now. Clearly, the responsibilities that come with a public company in terms of regulatory filings and dealing with the regulatory agencies. We obviously have to take that very, very seriously, and we will and will continue to do so. But I would say, most of my time is actually just spent nose to the grindstone and create value by getting our sensor out to help as many people as we can. Because I think not only does that, fulfill our mission and why we spend our waking hours and our lives doing it to create some good in the world, but for the investors, it'll just be good news, right? If we accomplish what we accomplish, the stock price is going to reflect what the inherent value of the company is, which I think will be good news for everybody.
Exactly. And I think anybody who is investing is someone that believes in the technology, believes in the mission and the purpose. And as the saying goes, right, if you push through with your mission, the money, success, and fame will eventually come with it. And I really do believe in that. And so you did mention your team, and I'm sure in a space where things are emerging, right? Like you guys are pretty much like grassroots, starting this technology, taking the reins on it. You have a team that also believes in this mission. Can you tell us more about your team? Have they been on the team for a long time, or was this newly assembled for Lumi?
Yeah, no, the team's been with us for a long time. We've obviously have some new team members as well. I think the average tenure is probably 5, 6 years on our team. I can't say enough good things about it. I think we have some of the smartest engineers, smartest scientists around. We have a wonderful board with a broad set of experiences. One of our board members was a former Secretary of Veterans Affairs for the United States. One of our previous board members was a U.S. Senator. Our current team has experience in large companies such as Roche and Becton Dickinson and Bechtel, and as small as entrepreneurial spirit and entrepreneurial journey. I was a consultant at McKinsey and Company for a while. I have a PhD in biology from Johns Hopkins. We have a couple of we have PhDs and MDs on staff, and so I think it's a wonderful team that has a broad set of experiences, both domain expertise as well as leadership in this sector that really will get us to where we need to go. Let me say one last thing about the team,
Of course.
if I may. Um, the entrepreneurial journey is a difficult one for anybody who actually have gone through it, yourself included, right? Trying to start and building a successful platform. You have your up and downs, and I'm so proud of our current team that not only do we celebrate the ups together, but during the really dark down times, right, around COVID, around some of the economic downturns where private money was harder to raise, the team's focus and belief in the mission was so strong that they stayed with the company until today and are reaping the rewards of it. And I think ultimately hopefully it definitely tells me in spades, but hopefully what this will convey to your audience as well is that we are very mission driven, and that mission driven will translate into good things that, from an economics perspective, it will come. But the team is absolutely determined and driven, and we have the right domain expertise and experience to actually do it. Very, very proud of the team for sure.
No, that sounds like an amazing team. It's like the Avengers, right? You have all these awesome
Yeah.
superheroes coming in together and creating such a positive environment, and an environment where your mission is out to help people. I absolutely love that. Now let's just talk a little bit about cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, nobody wanted to touch crypto, especially
Yeah.
from the institution side, because it was still a speculation. And then 5 years ago, it started getting more popular. And then just 2 or 3 years ago, the Bitcoin spot ETF came out, which revolutionized crypto because it gave crypto kind of a stamp of approval by institutions, and everybody started jumping in. Now, on your side, Profusa has actually gone into crypto and created a crypto treasury. I believe it was about $1 million. Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about that?
Yeah. Hey, Jacob, listen, let me pause a little bit. And you can edit the hums and the haws out. But yeah, yeah, Jacob, here's the important part of this, right? Listen, fundamentally, we have a company to run. building sensors, helping patients, helping physicians. That's our core mission and core company. But as a public company that's got some resources actually coming in, intelligently managing those resources and creating value through treasury management, I think is something that we actually have to look at and continue to look at. And we just view the crypto or Bitcoin in particular treasury management as a strategy for us to actually put some of our cash into an alternative vehicle that actually we believe is a very good hedge against the erosion of the US dollar's buying power, both short term as well as medium term and potentially long term. So it's not just, trying to stay ahead of inflation, but I think on a longer term is a good hedge for fiat currency going up and down. It's not our core business, clearly. It's not something that we um, uh, say that we're going to migrate toward being a Bitcoin company. Far from it. We're a medical device company creating this product. But I do think that is very smart, if we were to say so ourselves, and incredibly useful for us to look at uh, Bitcoin as an alternative way to actually create some value and provide some hedge, if you will, on the inflationary pressure and the devaluation pressure on the fiat currencies that's happening around the world. And that's why
And
we did it.
And you know what? It's just kind of like having like a little savings account, right? Like that is
Yeah.
not your all-in be-in. It's just something on the side. Because I mean, personally, I do think the American dollar is losing its buying power. I think everybody at this point is starting to realize that, and that's why the United States is also getting into crypto and creating their treasury because they know that crypto is
Yeah.
kind of the only thing that's actually making waves compared to the fiat currency, especially with inflation. But what are your personal thoughts on crypto? For example, do you own your own personal? Have you been a crypto fan from years ago, or like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I gotta tell you, listen, from myself personally, I've only been getting smart on crypto over the last year or so. And my thought is, I think it's very similar. I think, listen, there's going to be short-term volatility as with any instrument like this because it's not, kind of pegged to anything, right? So there's going to be some volatility. I think, I'm a big fan of Warren Buffett and others, but I do think he is wrong when he says, this is rat poison times four or whatever it is. I think this is actually, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, if you actually think about it, as a long vehicle, right? If you could stomach the volatility that potentially could happen as a long vehicle and the way the instrument is actually set up, I think it's a great hedge against not just inflation, but also the decline in purchasing power. And I think it's actually one of the probably longer term and safer way of preserving wealth. You could go into real estate, you could go into other traditional area. I wouldn't put everything in it, but uh, having some hedging, if you will, on another instrument that actually I think has ability to actually to preserve wealth without the fear of the shock to the larger geopolitical system. I think it's a smart move.
I think so too. I'm pro crypto, not the little ones like the meme coins. I do
Right,
not touch those at all.
right.
My main two are pretty much just Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I think the technology, the ability to transfer and transact, I think that's just amazing. And I'm sure many of my audience members are like, "Yay, Ben loves crypto." So that's the best part. And thank you for that. So Ben, before we end this interview, I do have a small segment on this channel where we do ask out of the box questions. Are you up for it?
Let's do it. I hope I could.
Perfect.
I hope I could do you proud, Jacob. Now I'm getting a little nervous.
Oh, not at all. I think you'll be the best. Okay, the first question: if Profusa was a person, what type of personality would it have?
Oh, I think Profusa as a person. Let me just throw some words out there. I think the person is ambitious. I think the person is accomplished. I think the person is self-motivated, self-starter. I think the person is kind, a leader, leader by example. And I think the person will be somebody you want to hang out with and have a beer with and aspire to be because the company's has all of those attributes, but I would probably put Profusa at, 17 years old and just about to go into the world and do its thing. And kind of think the best leader, the leader that you admire the most, Jacob, think that person and roll that person back to when he or she was a junior in college, let's say 21, 22 years old. I would say that's who Profusa is.
Optimistic, ready to take on the world.
Yeah, and have accomplished stuff, have demonstrated, through hard work and diligence and studying for the SATs and such that that the person could actually do it when they put their minds to it, but incredibly optimistic and has enough track record for people to be willing to bet on her.
I love that. Second question. What's the most random app that you've downloaded in the past or recently downloaded? Some people have like a sunset app, some have a meditation app. What's the most random app that you have?
I'm so sorry to say I'm such a geek. I have the latest random app that I downloaded is the New York Times puzzles app.
Oh, no, that's awesome.
I'm such a dork. Like I love those things. Part of it, Jacob, is I'm 58 years old and I want to just make sure my mind is sharp, right? So I figured doing those little daily exercises and such will keep my mind sharp. And then I enjoy them. So that's the last.
100%. It's kind of like Wordle. I was addicted to Wordle for like a year. It was like,
Yeah,
yeah, it was just like you love doing it. You love the puzzles. It's better than coffee sometimes.
that's right. It doesn't take much time, right? So I don't feel guilty about it because it's not like it takes 2 hours,
No,
right?
it's just like five, ten
Three
minutes
minutes.
max. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3, 4 minutes, and then I'm done. And then I feel like I accomplished something, and I feel like okay, my brain hasn't eroded that much yet. That's good.
Okay, so third question. If you were not in business, entrepreneurship, healthcare, medicine, what unrelated career would you have gone into?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that when I was younger, I worked for the Dodgers baseball team. And by the
Yes.
way, yeah, Jacob, it's like my biggest fear
I think
back
that
then.
is so cool.
It was really, really cool. Like if I were to say so myself, it was really cool. And my big fear back then was that my life peaked at the age of 21 because you're out like you remember you playing catch with Fernando Valenzuela, learning the curveball from Bobby Welch and Sandy Koufax, and it was just really kind of heady, amazing thing. I think if I didn't do this, I probably would have stayed in professional sports in the front office somewhere with the Dodgers or with another organization because that was you worked your butt off, but it was a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine like being in
Yeah.
sports, like in that world, just walking by these, athletes that you admire and that you want to become like. It's no, definitely that is actually so cool. If you want, you can tell us a little bit more about it. I think that is such a cool story.
Yeah, well, I got really lucky. My father at the time, like I said, we were immigrants to the country. My father at the time had a friend who owned a camera shop right by Dodger Stadium. And I went in the summer, help him out one day, and there are all these, and this is before digital photography, all of these negatives of Dodgers and black and white pictures of Dodgers everywhere. And it turned out that he bought the camera shop from the former official photographer of the LA Dodgers. And one thing led to the next thing, and I showed up at Dodger Stadium to be a bat boy for a day. And then you worked in the clubhouse, scrubbing toilets and vacuuming and washing the uniforms. And then I got invited to the next day, and the next day, and next thing you know, it was bat boy for about 3 years. Um, it- it's really amazing, Jacob, that you look back on that experience and you kind of think, other than the obvious, which is it was a lot of fun, right? Putting on a Dodger uniform and being on the field. I think that experience really, really taught me how to interact with people across a variety of sectors, across a spectrum of accomplishment, if you will. Uh, you know, going from meeting Ronald Reagan one day to Tom Hanks to Michael J. Fox, because they're all Dodger fans and baseball fans, and you come through, and you just realize that so many people who are accomplished are just regular folks who happen to be really good at what they do, and society valued it. And at the end of the day, they are humble. Most of them are. humble, excited to have new experiences like you as well. And they recognize that if you work hard, and you deserve whatever accolades that actually comes your way. And listen, you and I know, right? There are a few outliers where you say, okay, I'm glad I don't have to meet those people again. But for the most part, the ball players, they remember their own struggles. The actors remember their own struggles, and most of them can't be more gracious. And I'm so grateful to have had those memories.
That is definitely a one of a kind, once in a lifetime type of experience. I'm sure there are millions of kids out there, teenagers, young adults that would love to have that opportunity. So I'm very happy that you got that opportunity and you can tell us this story. So who knows? Maybe when you retire, you can go back to the Dodgers and say, "Hey guys, the coaching position has opened up."
There you go. Who knows? But yeah, it made some lifelong memories. It was really, really a lot of fun.
That is amazing. That's such a core memory that will never leave you. That is so cool.
Sure.
Okay, so Ben, the last question is before we end. Looking ahead 10 to 15 years from now, how do you see Profusa shaping the future of health and wellness worldwide? Maybe not just with Lumi, but maybe with future technology, future services. Where do you see Profusa in that time frame?
Yeah. I think in the next 10 years, Profusa will be in a position to have helped tens of millions of chronic disease sufferers live better lives. I think, let me ask the question, let me answer the question another way. Listen, if you look at and try to be a visionary and look at, hey, where does healthcare end up 10 years from now? And you kind of think about other parts of our lives, right? How did we shop 15 years ago versus how we shop today? Night and day. We went from physical infrastructure, brick and mortars, showing up to actually buying something for Christmas, trying to fight for a parking space, to transacting most of everything online via digital information. If you think about 20 years ago, how we researched versus today, 20 years ago, research is going to a library, checking out a book, reading the book. That's probably got information that's already a year and a half years old. Whereas now everything is in real time, much more collaborative and with real time information. Where do you see healthcare? I see healthcare 10 years from now with a similar journey, which is very infrastructure based, very brick and mortar boxes. You have to go to a doctor, you have to go to a clinic, you have to go to the OR, you have to go back and get checkup, to being much more relaxed and at home. And for that to happen, one, you need to have real-time information so that on telemedicine platforms, the physician doesn't have to ask you to go get a blood drawn. The physician just look at your data and say, oh, your telemetry and your actually biochemistry information is looking much better. Two, I think we'll be much better at predicting what activities you could do to prevent bad things from happening, or at least delay the onset of those bad things from happening. So you're not making the same mistake over and over again in your daily lives and daily choices and activities. And three, I think most of what can be taken care of at home and remotely, and therefore the cost basis of that coming down, will happen in most of the healthcare interactions will happen in less expensive places rather than OR and clinic. And the byproduct of that is the cost of healthcare starts going down because bad things happen later. And when you're trying to maintain somebody's health standards, you could do that not in the hospital or in the clinic where it's really expensive, but you could do that at home. And I firmly believe that in 10, 15 years or so, that's where healthcare is going to be. It has to be, right? Because healthcare is so expensive. And folks like you who are wearing Fitbit, there's a hunger for it. There's a hunger for, hey, I want to know what's going on in my body. I want to be able to manage and monitor what's happening to me every day. All right. So if that's the vision, what do you need to get there? And what you need to get there is what Profusa offers. What you need to get there is to be able to stitch between the activities and choices that you and I are making every day with real-time information that physicians could actually trust, which is real-time biochemistry information. And if you have just that body information, real-time biochemistry information from a person, then what I'm describing could happen. The telemedicine will be informed, which means you could stay at home instead of going to the OR. After a surgical event, you're monitored at home. because that data exists, you don't have to worry about coming in for unnecessary tests. You could just stay at home because doctors say, hey, you're doing fine. Stay at home. You don't have to come in. Or come in now because I'm going to prevent an amputation, right? Instead of waiting for a week when your appointment is. If you have this type of information, you'll be able to help people live healthier lives and be able to predict bad things that potentially could happen. The care of bad things happening, emergency room visits, et cetera, will go down. Cost burden goes down for the overall system. More money in our pockets because health insurance actually comes down. I mean, there are a variety of things that you could actually think of, right? That having real-time information really could change the healthcare landscape for the better. And the analogy that I would actually draw is Amazon and how we shop could only have happened if we are confident that real-time information on our phone, when I say, hey, I want a pair of Nike Air Jordans, whatever it is, or my son wants a pair of Nike Air Jordans, he could go online and trust that shoe is available at that price and he could shop around for it. So that real-time information enabled that interaction to occur and that transaction to occur. That just hasn't happened in healthcare yet. It's happened everywhere. But what's going to make it happen, make it a reality, is the availability of real-time biochemistry information that you could trust. It's analogous to like this, good pricing data for a shopping app, right? But once you get that done, I think everything else will happen.
And you know what? I'm very excited for that because I would love to have everything in real time. I'm tired of just looking at my steps. I want to know everything else.
Right.
And I think a lot of people do. But no, this is amazing. And Ben, your technology, the future of the technology is definitely going to be it's going to revolutionize the global healthcare system because, I mean, we're tired of waiting and waiting and then something bad happens and we don't know why or when it started. We want to track things, just like as you said, right? Amazon revolutionized everything by incorporating the digital aspect, and everything's going to be digital. So I think healthcare is about time. Like, I mean, during COVID, we did have telemedicine. You did those FaceTime calls with your doctor and so on. But I think this is a much more detailed, more accurate way of dealing with whatever health challenges that you might have. So I am very looking forward to that. So Ben, thank you so much for the wisdom, the expertise, and the background on Lumi and on Profusa. Audience members, I'm going to have all of Ben's and Lumi's information and Profusa's information in the description box. So please check them out. And my audience, I always bring on the best guests, the best experts, the wisdom, the information that we get on this channel is unlike others. So thank you for being here with me today, my audience members. Ben, I know it's a busy time, so thank you. I'm honored that you're here with me today as well. And until the next time, my viewers, stay ranting.